The USSR made a decisive contribution to victory in World War II. The country now had a high international status, which was emphasized by its membership in the UN Security Council and its veto power. But as we have discussed in previous videos, the bourgeois governments of the Western countries had been afraid of the spread of the Soviet Union's influence since the Bolsheviks came to power. This led to the formation of two opposing camps. As you may have guessed, today we're gonna talk about the Cold War. This is historic, and we're about to begin. Back in early April 1945, Sir Winston Churchill ordered his chiefs of staff to develop a surprise attack on the USSR. Operation Unthinkable. And yet it became clear to Western countries that it was impossible to crush the USSR by force. Hitler's example was convincing enough. The confrontation between the USSR and the US proceeded without open armed conflicts, so this war was called the Cold War. Of course, the Cold War had a number of reasons. The world was bipolar, and the supporters of the two systems, capitalist and socialist, first struggled for influence on the world stage. Second, they felt the need to unite in the face of a threat from the opposite camp. Third, they had a mutual desire to secure advantages in the event of World War III. It is believed that the formal reason for the outbreak of war was Churchill's Fulton speech in 1946. He expressed the idea that capitalist countries needed to unite against the influence of socialism. This speech aggravated international relations. On March 12, 1947, the Truman Doctrine was announced, which formulated a policy of containment against the USSR throughout the world. Hundreds of millions of dollars were allocated to Greece and Turkey under the pretext of communist threat. From the late 1940s to 1957, a social movement called McCarthyism existed in the United States. Paul McCartney had nothing to do with it. This movement was accompanied by the aggravation of anti-communist sentiments and political repressions against communists, anti-American citizens. Justifying their policy with the Red Menace, the McCarthyists also fought against liberal intellectuals, labor unions, and the policy of negotiations with socialist countries. In the USSR at the same time, there was a struggle against dissidents. The struggle against cosmopolitanism was a massive political campaign conducted between 1948 and 1953 against skeptical and pro-Western tendencies among the Soviet intelligentsia, which were seen as anti-patriotic. As part of the Cold War, socialist and capitalist blocs were formed. In 1949, CMEA, the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, and NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, were created, uniting the military resources of the capitalist bloc. In 1955, the Warsaw Pact Organization was created, which consolidated the bipolarity of the world. It was a military-political alliance led by the USSR. Communists and capitalists fought for influence on the territories of different countries. Although it's common to say that there were no open armed clashes between the USA and the USSR, there were hybrid wars and local conflicts. We'll tell you about them in the second part of the video about the Cold War.
Thank you all for watching. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. New video is already on the channel.